So AlphaGeo does geospatial analytics and predictive location forecasting. We're taking a lot of trends from investment flows and migration flows to climate change and kind of putting it all on a map and saying, what are these trends point to, or what can we infer from all of this? And so you start to see which economies or areas are going to grow or shrink in the future. And it was interesting that in our research, we found that the Great Lakes really benefits from having a fresh water supply and climate resilience, and it became so cheap after the financial crisis of 15 years ago and deindustrialized. People are starting to come back, and investment is starting to come back. 15 years ago, it was very strange to say, oh yeah, Michigan is where people are going to want to live in the future, because of course it was really on its knees after the financial crisis. But now it takes time, of course, but really it's turned a corner, and you can see that people are moving back. There's a real kind of demographic dynamism. So Michigan is one of the places, is part of the broader Great Lakes region, that is re-emerging on the economic map of the country in a very productive, positive way. Well, to be clear, Ann Arbor has never suffered because it's a big university town, one of the biggest in America, and it's a great example of how a university town and the university is an anchor of a perpetually dynamic community. So Ann Arbor, Michigan is great, and as many investors know, from a student housing standpoint and other real estate asset classes, it's a good, safe bet. I've been to Grand Rapids recently, and I've really seen, again, what I'm calling this industrial renaissance. Some pretty advanced companies that are doing manufacturing and other kinds of goods and pharmaceuticals and so forth are anchoring there, and you're seeing the economy growing, skilled labor and families taking up residence there, and of course Detroit. And having gone to Detroit a few times now, I'm really impressed with the downtown rehabilitation and other kinds of projects there, and it has like a great young, innovative, entrepreneurial urban vibe. So definitely I'm very long. And look, not every state has at least three kind of, key economic hubs, and Michigan has 3 or 4, which is a really, really promising sign. The demand for automobiles is still very strong in the United States, and of course the US wants to make more of the overall components through the assembly process of the finished vehicles, rather than have the chassis of an automobile move across borders 12 times and primarily be assembled in Mexico. Mexico has been very competitive in this area, and Canada is even trying with the battery technology and developing the battery industry, and therefore doing more electric vehicle manufacturing in Canada. So everyone is trying to fulfill some or more or all of the rungs in the value chain of electric vehicles. So I think that the tariffs, on the one hand, of course, they clearly make it more expensive to import foreign vehicles, and the goal is to have, to increase the incentive for local manufacturing to flourish. If those work in tandem, then you can imagine it ultimately supporting the industry. But at the moment, remember that a lot of the components for automobiles are made abroad, and depends on what grade of steel or what country of origin of steel you're getting and so forth. But if American steel can start to thrive on the back of the Nippon deal and American steel, and the battery technology improves and so on, and of course electronic components, you can start to imagine that ecosystem starting to really take off in Michigan again. Well, so the Great Lakes is quite literally one of the most climate resilient regions of the planet, because the Great Lakes themselves are the largest inland freshwater supply on the planet Earth. And of course, at the same time, ironically, it's a region that was hit very hard by the financial crisis and more broadly globalization and deindustrialization and offshoring of technology. But now Michigan, as the real hub of the Great Lakes region, is experiencing a bit of a renaissance. So it has that climate resilience as much or more than any other state in the country or any other place in the world, but is also experiencing an economic revival at the same time. So where you get an economic revival and people starting to return and climate resilience together, you have all the elements for a place to be, not necessarily the powerhouse that it was in the mid-20th century, but certainly restored in its role as a real anchor of American industry. Yeah, Michigan is definitely a market for real estate investors to be looking at. They can be looking at it from the standpoint of industry, as of course, again, you've got manufacturing and a revival there in various sort of industrial categories. I would look at it definitely from a real estate, from a residential standpoint, multifamily in places like Detroit, and of course rehabilitation of the blighted real estate in the greater Detroit area for single family homes. So either SFR, BTR, or just as a broader single family market. So I think residential industrial are going to be really strong in Michigan.